Yes. Moving on. Key to any process or organization lies in its framework. Similarly, key to conveying ideas for reforms is in engaging with the audience and making them receptive. We now have the pleasure of being audience to two eminent personalities who shall further this event with their keynote address. It's indeed a great privilege to have Honorable Justice N. Santosh Hegde and Dr. Jaiprakash Narayana grace today's occasion by soliciting to be chief guests for this event. Thank you, sir, for taking time out and making this a very special event for all of us. A small brief about our esteemed chief guests. Honorable Justice N. Santosh Hegde is among the most well-known personalities in the field of justice who has effortlessly strived hard in making our economy corruption-free. His name is synonymous to honesty, sincerity, integrity, hard work, and perseverance. Right from his childhood, Sir has always been known for his will and determination, especially while making a point in cases and causes that matter. Most certainly, a man of his caliber would definitely adorn many jewels of honor, and Sir too has many such accolades to his credit. To name a few, he was the Chief Justice of India, the Solicitor General of India, Lokayukta member Anti-Corruption Organization in the state of Karnataka, and Judge of the Supreme Court of India. Sir is actively involved in many other organizations and has been befittingly conferred with several awards in recognition of his yeoman service. As enthralling it is to know about you, sir, it is equally humbling to have you with us today for this event. Hearty welcome, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Pranams to Pujya Swamiji. Namaskar to all the guests present, including Dr. Jaiprakash Narayan, my dear students. Very happy Independence Day to you all. I'm very happy to participate in this seminar because the subject is very close to my heart. I'm not a student of administration or governance. My experience comes from my 5 years tenure as Karnataka Lokayukta. Oh, by the way, I must correct you, Saranya. I was never the Chief Justice of India. I was only a puisne judge of the Supreme Court. So let's put records straight on that. Now, coming back to the subject, I learned a lot about governance during my 5-year tenure in the Karnataka Lokayukta. I saw so much of sufferings of the people because of maladministration, poor governance. And I was wondering why this was happening and what was the reason behind it. Then I realized I must study the governance system from the days of independence and trace it to up-to-date situation. Then I realized in 1946, our elders created a body called Constituent Assembly to frame a constitution for this country. That assembly functioned from 1946 to 1949 November. A wonderful document called the Constitution of India was prepared by that body, and which was accepted by we, the people of India, on 26th of January 1956. I must place before you certain things that happened in that, or certain discussions that took place in that Constituent Assembly, which gives an background to what is happening in today's situation. There, while discussing what type of a political system that this country should have, our elders spoke with emotion. They said, we Indians were never ever independent. We were under the rules of Rajas, Maharajas, foreigners. They made the law they liked, and we had no say in the matter. So they pleaded, now that we're going to become independent, let's adopt a political system by which every Indian feels this governance is mine. It's by me, it's for me. And internationally, there were many political systems. There was monarchy, there was dictatorship, there was ism-based politics like communism, socialism, capitalism. Amongst them was a system called democracy. The meaning of the word democracy then, I may sound a little pessimistic, but if it's a fact, the meaning of democracy then was government of the people, by the people, for the people. What it is today, I'll leave it to you all to judge for yourself from your experiences. So our elders accepted democracy as the political system of this country. And they created three institutions under that constitution called the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. What has happened to this institution after we became independent? Maybe the first couple of decades, everything was honky-dory, everything was good. I suppose so, because I was too young to comment on that at that point of time. But I have seen it from very close quarters, the governance from 1970. Honest, what has happened? The very same legislature which functioned from 46 to 1949, called the Constituent Assembly, there was never walkouts. There was no galata in that institution, because those were the House of Representatives of the people who chose, according to them, the best of people to prepare the Constitution of India. They never had any galata inside the house. What has it percolated down to now? In 2014, the Lok Sabha was to meet for 14 days. Not one day, one resolution was discussed. There was galata, there was walkout, and the assembly, the house was adjourned for 14 days. I'm just giving you one example. I don't have the time to give a lot. Each institution, I'll give one example of the thing. And the Times of India says at that point of time, one day's expense of Lok Sabha was 10 crores of rupees. This is what has happened by the passage of time, by fall in moral values and responsibilities in the institution. I'm not a politician, never been one, never will be one. Take the second institution called the executive. When the creation of executive was being discussed in the parliament, many elders spoke and they said, they are the future administrators of this country. We will make the law, they will administer it. Let's have the best of them. Let's have very high educational qualification for them. Let's train them to be best of administrators and governors. For that purpose, to keep away public influence from in their appointment of executive, they created an independent body called the Public Service Commission. At the center, the Union Public Service Commission, at the State Public Service Commission. What has happened to these commissions now? Does the word commission have more than one meaning? In Karnataka, the chairman of the Karnataka Public Service Commission is being prosecuted for receiving bribe for giving appointments in the governance. Now, here is a man who gives money and buys his appointment. Is he going to be honest? He says, I have not come here free. I paid for it. So he has a right to collect it. This is the second pillar of the Constitution. Let's come to the third pillar of the Constitution. We are reading about it now every day, about the contempt cases that's going on. There is allegation of corruption against the judges also. One case in this country, it has to be decided in the first court. It takes 15 to 16 years. There's a second, one appellate court, second appellate court, the High Court, the Supreme Court. By the time the final judgment comes from the Supreme Court, it will take about 50 years. Is that justice? Is there no way out for it? It's not happening. Why? Because people concerned in bringing about the change are not bothered about it. That doesn't mean the fall in values, which is the main cause, according to me, for fall in governance, is confined to these three pillars of the Constitution. It is there in every nook and corner. When I was young, I lived in a society which boycotted people who were suspected to be corrupt. Things have changed so much. Today, a man goes to jail on an allegation of corruption, takes a bail, and after 6 months or so, 1 year, comes out. He is received in a procession. Apple garland is put on him, as if he has fought for the nation's freedom and is coming out after serving the illegal imprisonment. Why? Are these people to be respected? And what is the consequences of it? Consequence, let me give you an example of the thing. In the 1950s, there was a scam in this country called the Jeep scam. Country lost 50 lakhs. Thereafter, every year, one or two scams came in the public domain. The Mundra scam of LIC, Dalmia scam of Bharat Bank, Nagarbala scam of Central Bank. When such like scam came, the number of zeros in the figure that was published started developing. I'm deliberately using that word. The zeros started developing. Come to the decade of 80s, there was the scam called Bofus. Country lost 64 crores of rupees. Come to 2007, there was Commonwealth Games. Country lost 70,000 crores. These are not my figure. These are the figures given to the parliament by the CAG, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Thereafter came the Colgate. Country lost 1,76,000. 2G scam. Country lost 1,86,000. Imagine what sort of a development this country will have if this is the growth of greed in us, amongst us. My dear students, who will change this? Not people of my age. We are responsible for bringing it to this age. You have to change. Build a society which will react positively to this type of actions, which will not respect people, how so popular they may be. When they are responsible for bad governance, they should be held responsible for that. But where is that society? Society was the umpire earlier. Things have changed. Now, let me give you my experience. I'm not a student of the governance, so I don't have any experience of in academically telling you what should be done, what should not be done. But let me place before you some of my experiences as a Lokayukta, which I saw, how bad governance has affected poor people, especially. Rich people can always manage it and everything. In 2008, a handicapped tailor came with his wife and a 6-month-old child to Karnataka Lokayukta. I asked him, what's the problem? He said, sir, this child, 6 months old, looks perfectly all right, but it has no rectum. It eats through the mouth, defecates through the mouth. The local doctor said, don't worry, take the child to a specialty hospital where the pediatric surgeon will rectify it. They took the child to a government medical college hospital. Being poor, they couldn't go to a private hospital. And the doctor demanded money. They gave what little money they had. The doctor counts that and says, for this money, I'll make a hole near the rib cage. And the fecal matters will go out of that. The child has to wear a bag throughout life. Just imagine, here is a doctor who has taken a Hippocratic oath to serve the patients. Here comes a 6-month-old child and he's got the capacity to give a future, but his greed didn't allow it. That's one type of side where I give you dozens of examples coming from hospitals. Look at it, I'll give you another example. One day, a lady over 80 years came. I asked her, what's the problem? She said, sir, I have no income. I have one son working in Mumbai. He sends me 250 rupees by money order. Postman wants 10% of that. Without that, he will not give the money. He'll make an endorsement, addressee not found on 3 visits, and the money goes back. Here is a postman who works there for decades together. He knows the condition of this lady, but he still wants his share. Because he is a central government employee. He didn't come within the Karnataka Lokayukta jurisdiction. It was transferred to another department. I don't know what happened thereafter. My dear students, it is your future and it is in your hand. No amount of law can prevent this. No amount of education by itself can cure this. It's only when you inculcate certain social values. And when you see to it that the values are practiced in everyday life, in everyday administration, then alone you can bring the change. Try and bring that change. The values, our elders created many values for peace and solidarity in the society, and we have lost every one of them. It's my appeal to you, youth. Inculcate just 2 values. One is contentment in life. The other is humanism. You don't have contentment, you get a disease called greed, which has no limitation. However much you make, you are not satisfied. You want more, more, and more. At whose cost? The cost of administration, cost of future of this country. other is humanism. We all love to call ourselves we are human beings. What sort of human beings are we? In Canada, there is a saying. It says, become what you want to become in life, but become a human being first. Without these two values, contentment and humanism, you can never be a good administrator. You got to understand why you're holding that post. Not for your personal benefit for which you have been compensated all types of salaries and allowances. You have been entrusted with the future of this country, future of the people. You have to inculcate these values and the knowledge which you acquire in your educational system, utilize it for the benefit of the nation, benefit of the people at large. Otherwise, this is exactly the situation in which we are. We have to change it. But you, as the title of the program itself says, youth. No, it may be there, but we have to change it. As I mentioned, I repeat, no law can change it. We have seen, we have enough law and we have a system where that law doesn't operate at all, at least not immediately. So nobody is afraid of being punished. So law is not going to change it. You have to change yourself, change this society, make people who are guilty of maladministration feel ashamed by boycotting them. That's the only way out. My dear students, a very good program. I'm sure you will discuss various aspects. You have bureaucrats there, you have other experts and students of administration most probably. They will be giving you enough ideas. Mine is purely out of my experience in Karnataka Lokayukta. I never learned all this, never saw all this when I was a judge. Because certain things were placed before us, we had to accept it. We have no right to go beyond the records. We could not use our personal information to decide a case. That was the jurisprudence we had to follow. When I came to Karnataka Lokayukta, I saw so much of stuff. Karnataka Lokayukta was such a wonderful institution which had then only two powers. First is grievance redressal, helping people who suffer from maladministration and giving them relief. Second is fighting corruption through Lokayukta police. Lokayukta had no power on that. It's the police who did it, because under the Prevention of Corruption Act, any investigation could be conducted only by a police officer, not below the rank of a deputy superintendent of police. Now it has come down to the inspector, whatever it is, and still it's only a police officer who can do it. And the first jurisdiction of grievance redressal was such. It gave me so much of insight to what's happening. Yes, I've been very, very negative. That doesn't mean the entire society is like that. Let me give you one example. In 2014, one youngster called Harish Nanjappa, 28-year-old chap who was riding a motorcycle, met with an accident. When a punctured lorry went over his body was severed to 2 pieces. He was still alive. Look at the contradiction of reactions. There were dozens of people who were taking photographs, videographing. He asked for a little water. Nobody did. The ambulance comes. The staff lift the body pieces and put it in the ambulance. He was still alive. He told the ambulance staff, please tell the doctors to donate my eyes. In 2016, one of the TV channels, Jesus channel, gave a posthumous award to that boy, our youngster, which was received by his mother, and I was asked to hand over the award. Where is our humanism in us? Therefore, my appeal to you again is inculcate just 2 values, contentment and humanism. Everything will change when you become administrator. You will understand the powers that's vested in you and for what it is done. Maybe the higher echelons of the society may suffer from policy matters, but they don't suffer from maladministration because they have their ways to get their things done. But large section of have-nots suffer because of maladministration. change this society, change the system. Thank you very much, and I wish this program all success.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That you are very right. Experience teaches us more than anything else, and we completely agree with you that why we aspire to become maybe teachers or doctors or anything in that capacity, we forget to become humans. And today being Independence Day, I think it's quite relevant for me to say this, that freedom possibly is the most overexploited, not just exploited, overexploited attribute, where people just irresponsibly use what they have when they could very well use it for so many other beneficial things. So we are probably regressing in that sense from being a service oriented uh, government or an organization. We are probably going into a business model where everything is just about money and power, probably, and all the ego or fame. But we agree it's humanity first, and we've got to be aware of the power of freedom that we have, and we have to use that responsibly. Thank you very much, sir. That was really insightful, especially coming from your experience. Thank you. We do have another eminent personality amidst us today, bringing an elite ambience to this event. Dr. Jayaprakash Narayana, welcome, sir. A physician by training, Sir went into the Indian Administrative Service in the aftermath of the emergency and failure of the Janta experiment. With a formidable reputation spanning his distinguished 16-year career in public service, Dr. Jayaprakash has many accomplishments to his credit. Quoting a few, Sir's IAS career